She never called you back. You never got the job. You're anxious, mad, sad, frustrated, upset. All of these negative emotions, they used to rule me. They used to rule my life. They used to constantly populate in my head. The worst part was just when I thought I was over it, boom, something random while I'm walking reminds me of her, reminds me of the job I didn't get, reminds me of the how I messed up in the past, etc. And that wave of emotions comes back, and it dictates how I feel and the decisions I make in my life. I used to be completely ruled by these emotions, and honestly, sometimes I still am. But I figured something out recently in sort of this sort of self-improvement journey, if you want to call it that, although I hate that word now, that has really helped me tackle addressing these feelings in a very sustainable way. And it's not any advice that I've heard online so far. And also, I think what's interesting about this way too is that this is something you can start doing tomorrow that will instantly improve your life, or at least it'll help you process your emotions better. So in this video, I want to break this down, why it helped me and how I think it might help you. The reason you feel intense emotions, it's not rocket science, right? You have evolutionary wiring in your head that basically makes you feel these intense emotions like fear, anger, etc. Because, when we were running from dinosaurs back in the day, right, that's how we survived, right? But now we're no longer food. We're just vibing, right? We're scrolling on TikTok, or we're doing whatever it is we do. Hopefully you're not scrolling on TikTok. It's horrible for you. Anyway, that's a separate video. No judgment if you do. I've been there, at least on Reels. Those are insane. Anyway, the point is, nowadays we don't have those elements of our prehistoric times, and so what ends up happening is those emotions still populate your brain in the same intensity that they did back in the day, but you don't actually have a reason to use those emotions, right? And then the other two reasons that you feel these emotions really intensely, again, super basic stuff, are your genetics, right? So oftentimes you will inherit certain traits from your parents, and speaking of your parents, your environment, right? So when you were a kid, if your parents yelled at you a lot, you were constantly put in this fight or flight mode, and so you felt like you had to sort of express your emotions and not be able to control them. Or vice versa, your parents never yelled at you, they never expressed any emotions, and so you suppress all of your emotions and you push them deep down until, one day they all just, bubble up. Now, most of the advice out there is complete bullshit. Most of the advice out there that I've heard, that I read while I was trying to understand how to get better at managing my emotions is, oh, you should just distract yourself. You should just meditate. You should just go to the gym. You should just focus your emotions on other things, right? You should just not think about it, etc., right? A lot of these very corny things that we've heard, or at least, if you've done research into this, a lot of the YouTube videos that you'll see out there, they'll tell you, oh, just be mindful, right? Just whatever. And those aren't necessarily wrong, but for me, they weren't really helpful until I discovered this last element to that advice that I hadn't really seen online very much. And so that's why I wanted to share it. And this last element is really, really simple. Like, it's so simple that you're gonna be like, why didn't I think of that sooner? And maybe you've already heard of this before, but maybe not in the way that I'm gonna explain it. The thing that I found that works best for me is sitting with the feeling. Not running from it, not distracting myself, not trying to, meditate and, cleanse my thoughts. It's literally just naming the emotion and forcing myself to feel that emotion. Because essentially what happens when you do this is you rewire your brain to not avoid that painful emotion and to feel that, and you start to build your tolerance for that emotion so it no longer affects you in the way that it used to. Not only that, but when you do sit with that emotion, your brain realizes, wait, it's not that bad. I'm not gonna die. There's not a tiger or a dinosaur running after me, right? I'm okay. And when you force yourself to feel that emotion, you're gonna notice within literal seconds, if not minutes, it just dissipates. You feel it, and then you realize, wait, this feels shitty. Wait, this doesn't feel good. I feel frustrated. I feel sad. I feel whatever. But it's okay. And it just slowly fades away. At least that was my experience. And I really encourage you to try this. But I also want to break down why I think that the advice that out there that talks about this sort of thing isn't really helpful. Like I said previously, there are kind of these three main camps out there. One of them is what I just described. But the two more common ones that I've seen are, number one, distracting yourself, and number two, avoiding emotion. Right? So like, oh, just go talk to your friends, just go do something else, etc., just whatever. Or, in terms of distracting yourself, oh, just take that anger, right, and go lift weights, right? We've all been that guy or seen that guy, right, that has the winter villain arc, right, when the girl breaks your heart and you're like, screw this, I'm gonna get yoked, etc. That can be really helpful, But the way I like to think about it is avoidance is level 1, right? So running away from your emotions is level 1. Level 2 is what we just talked about, right? Having that villain arc, right? Going into the gym, getting absolutely yoked, using that negative emotion as fuel, etc. But level 3, and I think this is kind of the level that you need to ascend to after you sort of are at level 2, is this idea of acceptance. It's accepting these emotions and processing them in a healthy way to where you still get the same benefit of level 2. That's the thing too. It's like, you might think that, oh, because if I accept these emotions, then I lose the fuel, etc. No. When you accept the emotion and you feel it and you force yourself to feel it, you start to think, at least for me, this is what happened to me, right? And I'll give you a very specific example. I remember I was in the shower and I thought about a girl who, I had seen previously, things didn't work out, etc. I got really anxious, I got really upset, I was very frustrated. There were things that I could have done better, in that relationship, etc. And there were things that I wish I had done, and I started to get really upset about it, right? And so what I essentially forced myself to do is take a step back, feel the emotion, and then instantly after I was able to do that and the emotion dissipated, I just thought to myself, wow, like, that feels really good. Like, now I feel energized. Like, now I want to go hang out with my friends. Now I want to go to the gym. Now I want to do these things. So you still get that energy boost, but it's coming from a positive place, not a toxic place, right? And that's really what's sustainable long term. It's also what the science says. The science says that using your negative emotions as fuel is good in the short term, but horrible in the long term. And the analogy that I read in the studies that I was reading is that essentially what it's like is pushing a beach ball underwater, right? And as you know, when you push a beach ball underwater, eventually what's going to happen is it comes flying back up, right? So it's not sustainable long term. Also, conceptually, it just trains your brain that instead of handling the emotion yourself, you have to go and seek some external way of sort of coping with it. And that's not to say that the gym isn't helpful when you're feeling down or all these different things. But what I'm saying is what you should try before that is really feeling that emotion to get that long-term regulation up. The last analogy I want to leave you with, which I think will tie everything in together and it'll help it make sense instantly, is this idea of the gym, right? We've been talking a lot about the gym, how important it is, etc., right? How people do it to distract themselves. And one thing I like to think is, okay, in terms of we talked about 3 things, right? Avoidance, distraction, and acceptance. Those are the 3 levels, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3. And so in terms of the gym, what I liken those 3 levels to is, number 1, avoidance is when you don't even show up to the gym. When you're making the perfect workout plan, you don't even go to the gym, right? You're just thinking about the gym, you're thinking, oh, I'll go tomorrow, I'll go tomorrow, I'll go tomorrow, or you're busying yourself by doing other things that aren't really related to actually the gym. The second aspect of this, right, the second level, which is sort of distraction, is when you go to the gym, but you're on the cardio machines, you're rearranging the weights, you're looking up the perfect weight to do in the gym, like you're not actually doing the compound lifts, which will help you build strength long term. And that's what acceptance is. Acceptance is doing those heavy compound lifts that will build strength long term. Doing everything that's not getting into the gym, that's not feeling the emotion, isn't going to be helpful long term for you to really build that strength, build that acceptance, and eventually build that emotional regulation that you want to build. So the last question I want to leave you with is the following. Do you want to build compound strength, or do you want to keep running around, making the perfect workout plan, doing cardio, or avoiding going to the gym? I'll leave that up to you. Hopefully this video was helpful. Please like this video if it was helpful. If it wasn't helpful, I want to hear why. Please give me feedback. I'm trying to improve. This is, I think, my 2nd video now, so I really want to get better at doing this. I'm just sharing things that have helped for me, and so, if you want to see more of this sort of stuff, please, subscribe. And like I said, any positive or negative feedback is very much appreciated, but that's all for me today.